start. And hello, good morning, good afternoon, good evening to all of you. And thank you for joining this much needed conversation on gender equality and inclusive workplace, with our amazing lineup of speakers from digital business. So when I say gender equality, first question that comes to my mind is it only a women agenda? Is any discussion charter around gender equality mostly run by men? And I'm beyond thrilled to see how digital business is proactively discussing this allyship with both men and women co-leading from the front. Happy to introduce our panelists. You all must know them already. But hi, Anand, our President, Digital Services. Thank you for joining. Rachel Powers, our Senior Vice President from Digital Business. Vinuta Roy, Senior Vice President. And Lester Lamb, Executive Vice President, Digital Services. Thank you. So Anand, if I may just start with you, you lead such a huge team at DB. I mean, there are like thousands of people, and over last many years, is there anything that you see as unconscious and unintentional bias that comes into workplace, things that have changed or things that you would hope to change soon?
Thanks, Meenakshi. Thanks for having us all on this panel, and thanks for a great topic panel that you're hosting here today. I actually think that it's the contrary, which is that because there has been so much open and honest conversation on gender equality, and it's not just men and women, but all other genders included, and inclusivity. I think the first step of any problem in the world is always having an open dialogue and identification and acknowledgement of a challenge, right? And I think to me that has happened over the last several years, not just within HCLTech, but around the world. There is a identification and open dialogue, honest dialogue about why we need to get better at gender equality, at gender participation, at authentic participation. I like to use the word authentic because there's a lot of tagline equality programs, and they're not just the same. So I think the first step was great, which is now the world's talking about it. We're all talking about it openly and discussing it. I think the second was really then defining more proactive ways in which we address that, right? And these could be many different ways in which we define what our hiring ratios should look like. Where should we go to hire the right mix of talent? How do we create leadership that is also equal in gender and equal in cultural equality? So, the leadership then breeds that sort of authentic equality down the stream. A lot of those, I would say, tactical and strategic shifts have happened over the last many years. And it's a process because you're not going to see overnight results, right? The industry as a whole, 5, 7, 8 years ago was not talking enough about it, and hence the ratios were flipped and lopsided, right? We used to have anywhere between 10, 15, 20% women and other genders in our mix, and that's changed. We are maybe up at 30 as an industry. That's progress, but glass half full, which means there's 70 to go. Or at least 20 to go, right? So there's progression now in action, and I think we moved from talk to some strategy definition to execution across organizations. To me, that's a great sign. And there are multiple real issues on the ground that we'll talk about as we progress in the panel that needed, as I said, they needed to first be identified, then talked about, and then action. You could just not assume it'll happen automatically. And so I'm quite hopeful about the changes of the last 5-6 years. You might be on mute, Meenakshi.
We can't hear you, Meenakshi.
Sorry.
Now, that's not something I often say to Meenakshi. She's never on mute, but.
Yes. So Anand, you talked about 30% progress, but 20% still to go, 20-30% more. But just one statistic that is a little bit disturbing in last 2-3 years is since COVID started, our numbers were going up, but then some downward shift happened. So maybe Vinuta, if you could talk about, just do you see that too? Like, so, what I heard and also saw in my immediate neighborhood and friends and workplace, the burden of home and workplace both suddenly came on the women when some of the countries were not ready to support women or parents with childcare. Was that the reason, or was technology enabling them to work from anywhere? Like any shift that you saw in last 2 3 years, which was not so positive, but maybe HCL Tech did something different, or we need to do something different. Vinuta?
Yeah, hi, Meenakshi. So good evening and good morning to all of you. Um, yes, it is true that there is difference in the shift that we have observed in the last 3 years. But I think it is both positive and negative from what I have seen from the market point of view. Positive from the point of view that it has given a lot of flexibility, and we have opened up a new workforce, I would say, out there to hunt for us in terms of increasing our ratio. But at the same time, there are a lot of people who have reached that mid-career, or I would say senior leadership level. They have actually looked up for different priorities in life. Now, this could be a short-term impact or could be a long-term impact. Only time to say that. But I think it's up to us to leverage the new workforce that has opened up due to hybrid model that we have, and also the kind of technologies that we are in today, which is disrupting every now and then, has made us look at the job market very differently. Today we are looking at not experienced people who have done it before and who have proven it. We're looking at those workforce who have the ability to deal with new technologies, learn new technologies, and have the appetite to, being able to adapt to new technologies. So that's something that I would find it like an opportunity for many of the ladies, and to actually really test this. What we did was that we launched a campaign called Return to Work, and we invited people who took a break from their career life, and we saw a very, very good response. Now, how good are they at the work? That is only something that we will test over a period of time. But it's most encouraging to see that we had very good response from the market applying for new job after like 5 years break or 6 years break.
So, Vinuta, just thinking out loud here, and this is a candid conversation and internal to us, so we are not really putting it out. But I just want to be as candid as possible. Do you think, like, when we launch programs like Returnship, is it targeted to just women, or there could be like single parents, like men who've taken break? How inclusive is that program? And like just growing up, I remember my parents and my immediate family always told me to have confidence and capability. That third aspect of childcare just got added when I reached that biological stage, or when I was ready to expand my family. And then I started to understand how this could be different for women. While women don't become moms, it's people who become parents. So anything on that, Rachel, Vinuta, Lester, from any of you?
So just to kind of extend what I said before on the program that we launched, that was gender neutral. It was not really specific to women.
Yes.
While we got better response from the different, I would say women sect, but it was actually open for all, and still the program is on, and we did get, I would say, good response from men also, but not as good as women. That's what I would put it across. I guess in India, which is where we opened up largely this particular program, response from women were better. But in the Jews, we wanted to launch, and we did see when we did the soft launch, we did see getting better response from the men. So we have to see this. As I said, just 6 months into this program, and we'll have to see how we can look at tapping this different market that we are in today, and if we can actually convert into opportunities.
Yeah, sure. Rachel, would you like to chime in on this? Like, I'm interested to learn how you think it becomes a women issue at some stage of either our career or our collective workplace journey. Rachel?
Yeah, you can really take this one in any direction. I think that when you're looking at it from, there's the balance of home and the balance of work. I think that just kind of on the home front, kind of going back to the initial question that you asked, which was around during COVID. And the numbers starting to decline. I mean, I did see that. I've also, seen that just in the industry as well. I'm located here in Silicon Valley. But what I did find was a democratization also of that, where it was normal, right? And that the sharing of things around the household, children, aging parents, taking care of sick family members, all of that was very, everybody coming together to really help solve for that. But where it applied in the workplace, I thought was really interesting because it was a democratization of running meetings, how people were interacting. And I find that, as we kind of look towards the future around the technology space, we see that we're, kind of every, in the future, every job's maybe a tech job or a tech agency job. And so for women, it's also being able to show the skills around technology, that you're illuminating the path, you're removing barriers, that you're building belief in yourselves, what Vinu also said, and the value that they bring. And so I think it takes all of us to really help to make that happen. So it is, it depends on how you look at it. Also, at the same time, yes, it's a women's issue, but it's really a we issue. We as an organization, we as a community, we as a society.
Yeah, absolutely. And Lester, would you agree? I'm sure there is consensus on this, but if you, from your personal and professional life, you could throw some examples and advice, like, we celebrate, like I've seen International Women Month, or anything to do with gender equality program, we celebrate the achievements of women, which we should. But can we also spotlight men behavior, like heroic behavior, like not just heroic, maybe that's not the right word. Let's say, you dropping off the call, publicly declaring that you're going to pick up your child. Like it's not just a woman thing. Or you taking parental leave, or encouraging your teens to take parental leave. Why should it only be maternity leave? And celebrating that, not feeling conscious, not feeling embarrassed that I took 3 months off to take care of my child. Like anything you saw, Lester?
Yeah, there's a lot. So I've got a pretty loaded opinion on this, right? We should have equal treatment for all of our employees. Absolutely true. And whether it's a parent who happens to be a man or a woman, it's a tough job, and we should accommodate and celebrate those efforts. At the same time, we also have to acknowledge that we're specifically addressing diversity in the workplace as part of this conversation today. And driving that diversity for us as an enterprise is extremely important, because diverse opinions, diverse backgrounds, diverse educations drive better corporate outcomes. So while it is the right and human thing to do, there are really good pragmatic reasons why we want to drive diversity as an organization. So I think part of the opportunity for us is really talking about specifically gender diversity within our organization. And so for us, addressing how we empower women leaders, how we lift up women leaders, how we promote women into being a leader, and how we support their journeys as life challenges and life events come along, I think is really important. Men also face those things, and I absolutely agree that we should make available all of the support that we give to women as well as men for those same type of events. I think the focus and why it's important for us to talk about these as potential opportunities for uplifting women is because we do want to drive that diversity of thought into our organization as well. Men have less of an issue there, right? Men who happen to be parents have less of a hill to climb than women who are parents. And that's why I think we tend to bias towards that portion of the conversation. But you're absolutely right, equally important for both sides.
Sure, thanks, Lester. Anand, just like, there is a lot of stereotyping also you might have seen, right? Like, for example, women lack confidence and they need to build, they need to, have more mentorship, they need to have more confidence, or men are better in technology jobs. You lead digital business, you might be seeing a lot of girls, young girls and women leaders in technology, in digital, really leading from the front. How should we break these stereotypes?
Yeah, no, Meenakshi, absolutely great question. By the way, two of them are here on this panel from the
Yes.
business, so there's no question of that. And I always found this whole dialogue appalling. I know you know me, Meenakshi, for a long time, and so I grew up with a wife who's an engineer who went to school with me and did better with me in engineering school all along. And is even today, everybody reminds me of how smarter she is on every aspect, from mathematics to to life. So I always, when I come into these discussions, I'm like thinking of a completely different problem at home, which is I'm fighting for my rights most of the time. But I think, as Lester said, right, it's an issue and we need to acknowledge it. I said we've started to acknowledge it because the numbers speak for themselves. 30% is not a number to be very, happy about, and as an industry and even as HCLTech. And then as you go into the leadership, sort of cadres, that number dwindles, which actually is very telling that, hey, we're not doing enough, right? So there is that issue. So it's a combination of issues. One is we do see, even from our ability to bring in, right, the talent and the candidates availability in the market, sometimes is lesser than what we want to hire. And one would think, is that really a talent issue? Is there just not enough qualified engineers and designers and program managers and consultants or women? I actually say it may not be. I have a feeling that people do get attracted to like-minded culture organizations, and sometimes when they see our organization from outside, they might not be feeling like we are a really diverse organization. And I'm saying this just from experience of interviewing women leaders over the last 5 years, who asked me that question: is there enough diversity in your organization? Because it doesn't seem like when they walk a hall or when they come into an office or when they look at the pictures of our corporate website. I know that's changed in the last 3-4 years. It's not changed enough. So it starts with that do we attract naturally? Do people want to come and join us with the diversity quotient? Do they see the diversity quotient? We need to think about it, right? It's always like, we always say, hey, why is that person not friends with me? It's like, have you looked at yourself and said, what's wrong with me? So there's that one thing. Second is, I think, as you rightly said, there are these sort of notions of, if that person is not speaking loudly or her opinions are not, voiced in a very, I would say loud debate, or she's not out, after the office hours and meetings, hanging out with the office colleagues, it's seen as, it's not a very, very sort of forward-leaning leader. That was the stereotype. You're right? And I think we're breaking away from that, and we've made choices even within digital business over the last 4-5 years, where we've said the loudest duck is not necessarily the right duck. I mean, let's look at opinions, talent, and capability where it matters, and give that talent a voice. Sometimes when you created a non-linear path for such leaders and showed their ability to others, people were appalled and said, wow, this actually, we didn't hear her views because she wasn't always talking in the conference room, but she has really, really strategic ideas, and she has driven whatever her function was better than somebody else did in the past. So having those methodical identifications of, as you said, stereotypes, whether it is about, opinions and their ability to express opinions, creating forums like these that allow for opinion creation and expression, creating non-linear paths. We have to all look at our own teams and say, are there women leaders, women participants in this team that I can create a non-linear path for? Give it an experiment, and you'll see some interesting results over a period of time. And I think actually, to some extent, maybe Vinu said it, this whole forum post-pandemic, where we're doing so much collaboration virtually, has created new opportunities for equality, right? Because now you don't need to be going out in the evening and hanging out with me in a coffee shop to discuss business. We're doing it from our own homes, and right after this, I might be going down to fix my dishwasher. You don't know, and the same is with the women leaders in the room. So that allows for everyone to do their thing without getting into uncomfortable and unwanted zones. So to me, that's a huge opportunity, and I think all the women leaders and team members across the world should really use this time, because you're able to virtually collaborate. Say what you want on these kind of screens. Sometimes, when you're in the room, it's intimidating. Even I'm a little bit more confident on the screen. In the room, I'm generally less confident, right, of saying what I want to say, because I'm in my own zone, in my own chair, in my own, office room. I think those are, to me, amazing opportunities for everybody. They don't have to travel around the world. So it's not a, problem of like, how do I leave my kids and travel? How do I leave my husband and travel? Take good advantage of this amazing post-pandemic world and new workplace, and we're going to see some results.
Hey, Meenakshi, can I jump in here?
Yeah, of course.
I think out of the team of leaders here, I may be the newest to HCL, shortest tenure, So I wanted to make the observation along the lines of what Anand said, is that the progress here at HCL around diversity initiatives is really impressive. There's a lot of work that has been done even before I got here. At the same time, acknowledging that there's plenty of work to do. But boy, I think the progress that's been made and the forward thinking is really impressive to me. I think that we espouse and talk about bias training, right? Making sure people understand unconscious biases and how they actually play out in the workplace and how we adapt to them. So the acknowledgement and the understanding is there, and now there's a big opportunity for us to build in the tactics to address them. As an example, we talked specifically about gender biases. On the previous Femme Inspiration Leadership call, one of the guest speakers actually talked about the fact that women don't typically stand up or take a leadership role unless they're very confident that they can succeed. Whereas by operating model, men tend to be more, optimistic about their own capabilities, and a man who's maybe 20 to 40% fit for purpose will jump right in and do it, right? And what that means to me is, if I look at my own life and the business that I run, when I write a job description, I think we oftentimes write a job description like a wish list. Boy, I wish this candidate had 20 years of experience, an MBA, a PhD, happened to do brain surgery on the side, and maybe was a CEO in their previous life, right? It's all the things that I would want, but are kind of unrealistic. And I think if we, as a tactic, take that example and write those job descriptions for what I need versus what I wish, we could actually attract more women leaders to apply for those type of jobs. So it's just one small example, but I think breaking down into these type of tactics is how we make further progress.
Oh, thanks,
but Vinny, this is your space.
Yes.
Actually, I should defer to you on that one. What do you think of that?
Lester, I would just say, Anand and you also talked about non-linear path, right? Like how it's sometimes for men and women both, irrespective of the confidence could also be just an expression. Some people have this personality which is little submissive and socially very subtle, and some people have like I'll just give an example from my kids' world. My son, even if he has inaccurate answer to a math problem, would raise his hand in like a microsecond and he's like overconfidence is also damaging, right? Overly confidence that he knows that 16 times 32. But my daughter, who might really know the accurate answer, might take 5 more seconds to raise her hand. So it's just different personality. And, instead of stereotyping it to a gender, how do we create an environment where everyone can lean in with their voice? Rachel, Vinita, anything from your personal life, like any example that you would like to share, how you created non-linear path for yourself or for teams around you?
Actually, can I jump on something that you just said? It's actually not answering your question for a moment. And that is putting on my professor hat for a second, having taught in the classroom for many years and having very large classrooms. And what I have found is that when you ask a question, men are going to be the first ones to put their hands up. It's me. Women, I find, and this is global. I teach with a very global perspective. My students are coming from everywhere around the world, and you got to give that pause. And you need to actually wait. You need to actually count in your head when you ask a question to just pause. It's a really, really simple thing. The women hands are going to go up. So now take that into a virtual environment, right? And when, and it can sometimes be hard for women or for anybody really to be able to get their voice heard on the call. And so doing things like making sure you call on diverse perspectives when you're running a meeting is really key. Different backgrounds, different gender, different experiences. It's these different perspectives that are really going to help make it better. And it allows us to build off of each other's ideas as a team. And so it's just a really, really critical ingredient. Another thing that you can do is to rotate who's sponsoring this meeting. So therefore you have, maybe it's not the same person that's running the meeting, and that way you're giving opportunities to the women in the team to also be able to run and start to, depending on where they are in their career, maybe to build and develop their leadership skills, but then also bringing women to the forefront to be able to, to show their leadership skills as well. We're leaders here all on this call, and it's no matter where we are, in the organization, and it's important that we are helping each other and building up each other to help to be able to bring that equity and diversification of perspectives. And to be able to help that everything to be very inclusive.
Yeah, that's inspiring. Thanks, Rachel. Vinuta?
I just wanted to add to what point is going around about raising the hand. I think I went through that personally multiple times, even before I took up the current role. I think it is by nature with most of the women. Again, I cannot generalize. I'm sure there are even men who have this problem of raising the hand. We wanted to, we want to be very sure that we can do it, or rather, I would say reinforcing that we have the potential. I think that is required. In my view, I was lucky enough to have those managers who could actually tell me and tap my strengths. But I think consciously in the organizations, we have to do this, where we kind of give an ecosystem of giving an exposure to the women leaders, because that is required at this time. And of course, it is required for both men and women, I agree. But given the current issue that we have in hand, where we have only 20% in the leadership team, I think it is important for all of us to give that ecosystem, to nurture that talent that we already have in the system, give a mechanism to actually have a learning ecosystem as well, where we can consciously let them know that there is an opportunity to get into a leadership role. And you don't have to necessarily go through that before you actually, you can be from any background, as long as you have the ability to learn on the field, right? I mean, you should be able to learn on the job. I think we have to consciously do that, as Rachel said, in meetings, we have to unlock those unheard voices. I think as managers, as leads, we have to consciously make people speak. If you have not heard anybody's voice, irrespective of the gender, I think you have to call out those names and say, can you give your opinion? So small changes, if we bring up, I think we will find a lot of leaders who are naturally there to take up higher responsibilities. And most importantly, I think given the nature of ladies, having seen myself personally, I think carving out a particular function and responsibilities and testing, maybe, there are some risk, of course, but testing, where you're already not doing well, and, there's no harm in trying to kind of test and figure out if that person can deliver, will help. Because I think when you give a responsibility, there is an autonomy which comes in, and that helps the natural leadership qualities of a woman to nurture further. So I feel some of these changes, if we consciously do at all levels, it will help us to improve our gender diversity. And I think why should we improve? I think that is irrelevant today, because we know that the more we do, because we have a talent demand supply challenge, and the more we do, and I'm sure that we can contribute more to the growth.
I think it's also about creating a truly healthy organization, right? But I want to, to sum it up, I want to clip in two interesting just anecdote slash book recommendation, right? So let's first start with the book recommendation. There's a book that I read 4-5 years ago, incidentally called The Loudest Duck, written by I think Laura Liswood or something. You guys can look it up. Actually, it was gifted in one of these Wharton forums, Meenakshi, that we used to do. And it was actually about the ability to put your hands up, right? It was an old Chinese saying that the loudest duck gets shot first. But the woman who wrote it actually is a tiger mom, if you know what that means. And she said that world has changed. And if you don't put your hand up, you're not heard. And so it's a great book about both men and women who have, challenges putting their hand up, and I've seen it in all sides, right? The second anecdote is just something my mother used to say and, says to me. She's anything but a silent and a quiet woman. She's a very fiery woman, and she's had a great professional career. But once, I was talking to her about how do you sense challenges, because she used to also work as a government professional in India with sort of downtrodden and people who don't have a voice. And she used to, in Marathi, say something that I'll translate, that roughly translates as great leaders are active listeners of unheard solutions, which are silent solutions. So, they don't listen to stuff that is loud, but stuff that is not kind of loud in the room. Right. And I think it's whatever way you want to take it, right? Everybody listening on this call, in your own groups, like all of us folk here, if you don't actively look for that unheard voice, we're going to miss out on something massive as an organization. So just two plugins there.
Thanks, Anand.
We talked a little bit about.
Sorry, Lester.
We talked a little bit about the behavior of raising hands, and feeling comfortable with expressing an opinion or an idea. And that behavior is learned, right? As children, and I can't get into how boys and girls are raised, but we see this, right? We see that kids are raised in a certain way and we reinforce this behavior. So again, let me offer something tactical that we can all do. I would challenge the men and the women leaders on the call here to try this in your own meetings and see what happens. I've seen Rachel exercises in our digital consulting meetings, and I think it's really good. It's a tactic called amplifying voices. And what that means is when a woman, if you're able to elicit from a woman leader an opinion or an idea, you amplify that voice. And you do that by repeating and attributing that idea back to the person who said it. So as an example, if one of the women leaders, I'll take an example of Maureen. If Maureen offers a great idea, I've seen Rachel say, well, Maureen was talking about product management and XYZ. I think that's a good idea. What do you guys think? And by doing that, you're not only bringing that up, making sure that everyone heard it, not just you. Very important of what Anand said, which is we have to listen for those things in the first place. But I've heard it, I've repeated it, and I've attributed it to the person who came up with it. So, team, try that out if you would.
Yes, I think this everyday behavior change will also be very meaningful. And, extending the thought further to more stereotyping situations, Anand, we are missing Padmaja and Jyoti. Today on the panel, she had a conflict. But just, in client-facing roles, go to more market, solutioning, or sales-oriented roles, there is, again, a myth that how would you do it? And I've heard, without naming, I'll just tell you, one leader in HCL told me that how do we solve this problem? Because it's not only men asking them, it's women in HR or in hiring roles also asking, hey, how would you do it? So it's not a men-women issue. It's just a stereotype that people tend to think, how would you travel if it's a sales role? How have you seen changing it? And just spotlighting Padmaja's, contribution to digital business.
Yeah, I think Padma, represents a great leader who has, as you said, a very external facing role, which means it comes with all its challenges of balancing family with travel, timelines for massive deal submissions, being in war rooms, at midnight hours and dealing with, war room sort of participation, sometimes in person over weekends, all of the above. And then having client-facing role, that means there has to be a certain level of assertiveness, communication skill, and all that. And I think there are many such leaders around the world who have firstly broken that stereotype, shown us they have done it successfully over a period of time, And I think, again, back to some of the points we made, highlighting them, making others aware about them, because we're also a large organization. Sometimes even the best leaders get hidden in their zones or their lines of businesses. I did not know Padma before 7 years ago when I was in another part of the business. And then when I got to know her, I was like, wow, here's a really aggressive sales leader, who generally makes me shut up in a conversation. So yeah, I think, identifying them, sharing them, and then sharing their experiences across the world, including, leaders here. I did not know Vinu before 2015, and she has completely transformed our talent supply chain strategy, which is the nucleus of the growth of digital business. And Rachel, who came in to create a thing that we knew nothing about, like design and experience design. So, there are many examples of that within us. And I think sharing even within HCL is a great start, because examples exemplify and make others stand up and maybe imbibe some of the learnings, both men and women, to learn from these examples.
Yeah, absolutely. Vinuta, Rachel, anything that you want to share with we have 100+ people joining us today. Any example from your own life, your own career, which you can describe as like probably your biggest hurdle and the way you overcame it? Vinu?
Yeah, so Meenakshi, I think challenges are there in every field that you take, especially when you take up that role which you're not comfortable with, or you've not been through that before, right? So especially, if I have to take my own example, when I moved from technical delivery role to something on the operational talent side, it was not my comfort zone, especially when I switched to operational role, where I had to deal with numbers and finance. I did that for a couple of years. I had no idea about finance. But I think my manager was supportive, and what I did, I think, just to say, I hated numbers, to be very frank. Just like, I don't like driving, which is one of the things that I didn't like. But I think if you are interested to kind of do something different, I think you should be able to take up that risk. What you're good at, I think you should always tell yourself that you can always go back to, because you have done it before. And if you have got some shortfalls, some bridges to be done, you have to seek for mentors, and the mentors can come from any side. I looked up, when I took up this ops role, I actually used to watch the TV, where specific program used to come on, P&L and financial part of it, and BBC. And I also kind of started reading a couple of books. Sometimes I understood, sometimes I didn't understand. But I started getting in. That was the time when I know a lot of internet things, content also was, coming up. And I took that help to understand, go deeper into that particular aspect. I think as long as we try to find a purpose in our job, I think that's very important. Whichever job you take it up, and you will automatically find your passion, and automatically I feel that you will look beyond the role definition. I think once you start doing that, I think you will excel. So do not hesitate in taking a career shift, and if you want to, if you don't want to, that's always fine. And that's my suggestion to everybody, that if you feel that you're not growing, or you are not heard, or you want to make a shift, I think you should take that call it is important to have your sounding boards. It can come from family, it can come from professional life, but having mentors is important, and you can take inspirations from different people. I don't say the one mentor will help you all the time. So you have to keep looking around, and it can come even from my maid servant, right? I always say that, one of my maid really inspired, like, how, though she was illiterate, was trying to make sure that she tries to understand the subject deeper than what we explained to her. So I think this is what I think it takes for women to make a little bit differentiation, and I think we have to press ourselves forward. Only then the ecosystem will help us. And I know we always complain that men should be ally of women. I think it's both ways. We should support each other to be able to succeed in our life. Collaboration is very important. And as I said, have your purpose defined for yourself, and you'll find automatically the role shaping up for yourself.
Thanks, Vinuta. And let me tell the audience, I have always seen your recommendations, your impact reports, everything very number driven. So acknowledging that you little bit had that kind of a hurdle is, all hearts to you. But, I have been always impressed with your P&L understanding, and I take inspiration from you, Venu. Rachel, any story that you would like to share of the hurdle and how you overcame it?
Yeah, I think that in the experience design industry, there are, according to a McKinsey study, there are 61% are actually female in that industry. However, only 11% are in leadership positions. And so there's a couple of things that when you talk about hurdles, it's not just an event or a one time. It's an everyday, every moment. It needs to be part of your DNA as an individual. And I think that it's, like Anand said at the very beginning, about acknowledgement, but it's also about self-awareness. And so to really be effective and to start moving the needle is to be self-aware. And so and there's questions that women and men can ask. So for men, things around just that self-awareness of how has your gender influenced the opportunities that you've had in life, or what were you able to do only because you were a man? It's that self-awareness, and these are just questions to help you think through it. For women, it's not just about gender, and well, this is actually true for everybody, but listening to individuals with different backgrounds, right, in terms of race and sexual orientation, religion, ability. And these are critical to being able to understand how we're bringing these different perspectives and intersections and these different intersecting identities and behaviors to really being able to impact like us as individuals and our lived experiences, but then also for the business, because we know from industry statistics is that having a diverse workforce and diverse leaders actually is better for the business, both from from what Vinu was also referring to around the P&L, and this is validated out in the market, and it's only going to make all of us better. So it kind of goes back to the DNA of all of us to really being able to come together to bring the power of us to be able to make that happen.
Yeah, absolutely. And to be able to make that happen, this historic imbalance, see us launching many women-centric programs. So Lester, in your team, you might have a lot of men. Have you ever heard corridor talks that, hey, that woman got promoted only because of this program? That is also an issue, how we not use it as a superficial checklist for organization to show better statistic, but really making it a meaningful exercise to help with that historic imbalance. Anything, Lester, you would like to chime in with your perspective here?
Yeah, I think we can be really proactive in terms of not only nurturing the women in the company into leadership roles, but we can do a better job of just attracting women to apply for leadership roles that we have open. For those of you who follow football, there's something called the Rooney Rule. And the Rooney Rule, or for those who haven't followed football, there's something called the Rooney Rule. And they implemented this years ago. And the idea was for every head coach that you're going to interview, you must interview a minority candidate as well. That currently exists in the NFL. So the idea was to bring diversity because there's a lot of lack of opportunity for Black head coaches. So that rule has been in effect, and it has made a huge difference in NFL Black head coaches. If anybody watched the Super Bowl this year, you know exactly what I'm talking about. So my point is, could we do something where appropriate to apply something like a Rooney Rule for driving women diversity within our own company? For every candidate you have for a leader, maybe it's appropriate to look at a woman candidate as well before making a decision. We have a unique business. We are not the NFL. So we have certain considerations we need to take. Again, I defer to my esteemed colleague in the upper right-hand corner who actually knows recruiting and how to get people into the company. But it's an idea, right? And things like that, I think, can make a material difference in rebalancing, as you had suggested, Meenakshi.
Yes, Anand, there is a question from Lucy, just to take that thought forward. It's not just gender, diversity, but
I read
Lucy
the questions.
Yeah.
I read the questions. And it's absolutely right. And, we can call it Rooney Rule. We've actually attempted to put such I wouldn't say rules, but sort of, ideas around in terms of how we look at sourcing the best candidates for all kind of, leadership to program management to general, talent attraction across the world. Trying to really make it like a, hey, women first, or X% at least, look for it. And as you said, we had to balance it against the velocity of business, because sometimes it's like, they say, hey, we're trying to follow the rule, but then we're not finding the talent, and then what do we do? I'm hoping that as the velocity of business and the craze around the whole talent supply chain that happened last 2 years sort of sobers down a little bit in the market, it's a huge opportunity for us to maybe even double down on some of these rules / even create new ones. Like, I don't think we have enough women of color, whether it's Hispanic women, Black women, across the organization. I think we may be not even looking in the right places. We may not be looking in the right schools, in the right, other competitors where there are. It will need proactive approach. We can't wait for somebody to apply, because they may not apply because they don't think we are diverse enough. I'm just going back to my original experience. I've heard this from a few candidates, right? And so we might have to put some insertion of proactiveness there. And I think it's a time to do that now. I mean, it's basically the next phase. We did kind of the basics of diversity thinking. Now I think we have to really double click it. Again, my closest friend in the world is gay, and we grew up together. He lives here in the Bay Area, and feels that at IBM it's the most diverse environment, and it's one of the reasons he's never left from there, right? I don't know if we have that sort of culture within HCL, right? I mean, do we give that kind of feeling to other genders within HCLTech of comfort and, security? I don't know. I think we have to think about it, right? So since we're talking about gender diversity, let's go beyond the norms here. But I think we'll have to double click, as I said, on taking this further as a dialogue. And then proactively double click, which means go out and create a pull factor and not wait for, it to happen.
Yeah. Just to add to that, Lucy, I would also share with you that Anita Campbell, she's the new D&I lead appointed in Americas. I mean, she was already with HCL. Now she has this new charter. She and Michelle Rico from my team, from marketing perspective, have done many such stories around Black women, celebrating Black people, men and women both. And also Madhu from Ram's team, HR, is working with a university called Shaw University from North Carolina. There is a big focus on internship program where we hire from high schools. 50% of those actually represent underserved communities, including Black communities. We have Karen Kuatek on my team, who's doing employee volunteerism and CSR activation. And there is a lot of focus in reaching out to influencers, whether in White House or in universities, academia, or just underserved communities, to see how can we bridge this gap. But this is a very long journey. We have only taken first steps, and I'm sure you will have more ideas. Happy to connect with you offline. So Anand, we have 9
actually,
minutes.
it's funny, when I saw that question, the first name that came to my mind for somebody that needs to be a brand ambassador is Anita, because I don't think, again, it's like, we all just don't know what else, the jewels we have in HCL as leaders. Anita has been with us for 15 years, and I worked alongside on some of the most amazing rehiring campaigns when we did large deals that Anita led, and now she has this amazing role to inspire, women of color to come to HCL and inspire us to, make this a better inclusive place. So I think it's a great program, or a great choice.
Sorry. So we have 8 minutes left. Everyone, just any other question I'll take in. But last minute, your comments, summary, or inspiration for people who are listening or who would look into this recording later. Maybe Rachel, we start with you.
Mine is short and sweet. And so if we look at how to promote the contributions of women in our digital teams, both on the tech side as well as business, we want to support, this being part of our International Women's Month, we want to support women in tech. My short answer is let them lead.
Absolutely. Vinuta? You're mute. Also, like the next generation of talent, right, who might not be here with us today, but digital business focuses a lot on apprenticeship program and campus hires and entry level, and that cohort is something is very, very special because they will be the future leaders. So it's not just about resetting the fundamentals for existing workforce, but also reimagining the future of workplace. So Lester, Vinuta may rejoin. You want to go ahead?
Yeah, you bet. So it's interesting in the tech industry, right, as a whole, not just HCL, but generally speaking, attracting entry-level tech employees from a gender perspective is pretty close. I mean, it's not 50-50, but it's pretty close across the macro scenario. Where we have a huge opportunity is at the leadership level, because these folks drop off. Life events, marriage, having kids, etc. And it's the reality of the gender roles that we have in society, is that typically women are the ones who stay home and raise their children. It's not a choice that we make, but that's what society does. So the opportunity for us is really to continue our engagement and attract those women leaders to come back to HCL when they're ready to come back to the workforce. And there's so many things that we can do in order to espouse that, right? For example, maintaining that relationship, those ladies who may have left the workforce and will need 6 months, 5 years to come back to the workforce, maintaining that engagement, providing continuing education to them, and also ultimately bridging the wage gap that's going to occur because they've been out in the market for X number of months or years. So those are active things that we can do, again, tactically, to actually keep that engagement and bring them back. And I think I'm keenly interested on building more ways to do that with those folks.
Thanks, Lester. Vinuta, you're back. We also got 2 more comments. One about how can I learn more about D&I initiatives, and the second is focus on retention in addition to just recruitment. So with those 2 elements built in, any comment from you, any conclusion, Vinuta, on the panel?
Right. So from the D&I perspective, I think there are multiple programs starting from E2 level to E4, and from E4 onwards, there is a specific program for leadership grooming, and we also have a program for next-gen leadership, irrespective of gender, by the way, that particular program. So most importantly, I think it's not about the number of programs that we have. I guess there is conscious effort that we have within the organization to, introduce multiple programs, but how we leverage these programs to its best potential, that is most important. For example, recently we launched a specific technical seminar on next-gen technologies, and the more and more you participate, it opens up new opportunities for you. As Anand already mentioned, this is an opportunity to claim equity for us, because in IT, this is a large opportunity, I would say, to claim equity, where technologies are changing every day, and anytime you make a first move, there is an opportunity for you ahead of others. So we have to be, reshaping our career all the time, learning, unlearning all the time. I think if we do that, and take the best of all the programs that are launched, I'm sure we can, nurture ourselves as well as, promote our next-gen leaders to get into a better, I would say, better roles, and of course, thereby increase the leadership presence at the top level. So that's what my closing comment would be. But most importantly, I would say, I think we shouldn't hesitate to take up responsibilities and keep your learning hat on all the time, and opportunities will come to you.
Thank you, Vinuta. Anand, I'm not sure how many of DB participants today know about our recent CNBC partnership. So just, a special call out to that. We've partnered with CNBC, and we will be coming up with, because there were a lot of questions, how can we make the optics look better. Like, we might have people, but how do we let others know that we have a diverse organization? So we will have multiple episodes featuring our employees, both men and women, also inspirational women at top, and our leadership, including Ram and Roshni, CVK, Anand, Jill, Vijay, in India. Then, whenever calendar permits in next 2 to 3 months, this will be all televised on CNBC. And a lot of social media exclusives showcasing our campuses, the kind of programs we have. So that is another good thing, and we should definitely spotlight Black people as well. But Anand, clear closing comments, any inspirational thought for all of us to learn from, and what can we change to make it better?
I think lots of good conversation happened today. Seriously, I hope people get to watch it, listen to it, for those who didn't join, because we knew Rachel, Lester, all of us have great experiences and point of views from the last so many years. All I would say in the closing is just sort of follow all of those proactively, consciously, non-linearly, most importantly, authentically, because authenticity is actually seen. No matter what we do for optics, authenticity is seen over a period of time. Authenticity doesn't show up in one meeting, it shows up over a period of time. And people believe in authenticity over a period of time. So be authentic about this. And, it's a strange thing for me to say, but I really, really observe this closely, because that's how I was brought up, which is, if you want to be authentically diverse at workplace, be authentically diverse at home, right? And this is especially for men, because we're sometimes authentically diverse at workplace, but not authentically diverse at home. And people know what I'm saying here. So once you do that, I think it'll be really, really reflecting in how you come across at workplace. Your kids will observe it as they go into workplaces. They'll be more diverse. Luckily, I grew up in a household where both the mother and father were so inclusive in their careers and allowed for their careers to thrive together in a time when it was not normal. That it just drove that authentic conversation at home too, because that flows back into the workplace. So that's all I would say. And thanks again for raising the bar on this conversation, Meenakshi.
Thank you, Anand. And I hope we don't limit this discussion and these kind of forums to International Women Month. We should do it as and when we get an opportunity, and I look forward to partnering with all of you. But thank you so much for this amazing enthusiasm. I will read all the comments again, and if there is any question unanswered, we will make sure that we send the feedback back via email. But thanks, Anand, for taking out time, Rachel, Vinuta, Lester, and everyone across time zones. Thank you so much. Talk to you soon.
Thank you, Meenakshi, and thanks everyone.
Thank you.
For tuning in.
Thank you.